Did the judges get that right?
Yeah, of course they did. Absolutely. I mean, Woodley might have, some people are saying, and I thought too, going back and looking at the tape, Woodley might have landed, the harder and the more significant shots, but he wasn't making consistent contact, controlling the ring consistently whatsoever in this fight, in my opinion. Tyron looked like a UFC fighter in the ring, open-faced guard, not really having an actual hold in the phone type of guard as you should in boxing. And you could definitely tell that the way he was moving around the ring, he was a UFC fighter, but we knew that obviously. Yeah. Coming in, I just thought he would have been a little more, put together. I mean, you saw the strikes in the clinch, things of that nature. But what does disappoint me, and again, it's not a surprise of Tyron Woodley, he had the only knockout opportunity in the entire match and did not capitalize at all. There was one little baby jab after the fact. There was no rush towards Paul. And I don't know, this might sound dumb. Are you allowed to advance on someone that's leaning on the ropes or no? Like in boxing?
I mean, he can, and the referee's supposed to stop him.
Right.
You don't stop yourself.
Like, he just like that literally was the only, and correct me if I'm wrong, that was the only point in the match where there was like, oh, someone might go to the mat. There was never another point. And Tyron did not capitalize on that. He could have taken the fight in that moment. But either way, let's look past it a little more. No established jab. Footwork was kind of sloppy, and he just wasn't able, which, like we come to understand, when Jake Paul's got a 4-inch height advantage and a couple of inches on the reach, like you could tell there was just nowhere for Tyron to go. I mean, Jake had all the control. He had the length. He had the jab. He had the combos. And Tyron had none of that. So I absolutely got to say the judges got it right.
The only reason I say the judges didn't get it right is because it was a split decision.
Yeah, the one for Tyron.
Unanimous. What the hell was that judge looking at that actually scored the fight in favor of Woodley?
Yeah.
He wasn't even throwing punches. All he was doing was throwing haymakers.
Zero ring
48
control.
jabs the whole fight in 8 rounds. Like, you're literally only throwing 6 of them things around.
Yep.
It's like, bro, like he actually wasn't even working against as much of a reach advantage as I thought. It was only 2 inches.
Right.
You would have thought that the reach advantage was as big as the height advantage because he's about 4 or 5 inches taller than Woodley, but the reach isn't as great. And he still was scared to throw jabs. He had that ridiculous guard. He's in way better shape than Jake Paul. And after the 4th or 5th round, he should have attacked him. Yeah. He was so scared of that right hand.
Right.
He wouldn't follow up. He landed a good shot, and then he want to try to wind up and shimmy. He's like, bruh, you're not good enough for all this showboating. Just win the fight.
Right.
It was his fight to take, and he was too scared to take it.
Yeah, I highly agree.
It's sad, really. I mean, when you just look at them, like, bruh, you talk so much trash. You literally agreed to get a tattoo that says, I love Jake Paul before you took the match.
Yep.
And then you got out there and was scared.
Right.
You can't be scared after that. If I didn't agree to get a tattoo, I'm going to leave it all out there. You're just going to have to knock me out. I'm not getting a tattoo because I didn't swing.
Right.
That's ridiculous. I hope he gets a fake one just all for the media.
Yeah.
If he has to get a real tattoo with Jake Paul's name on it, that is sad.
And here's another big thing to where I feel like Tyron is losing even harder. So when you look at walking into this boxing match between Paul and Woodley, Jake had only boxed a total of 4 minutes and 41 seconds in his entire boxing career. You put him through the end of the 2nd round, and he's already surpassed that well on. And you think Woodley would realize that, would take advantage of that, because let's be real. Once the 4th round hit, Jake Paul was gassed. No form, no sense of really awareness, shaky legs, like sloppy footwork, maybe a couple of combos. But he never had a true threat to knock him out or really take this match for himself. He had to win it by decision, and especially once he ran out of gas. And you figured Woodley would have taken advantage of that. But let's also kind of bring it into perspective for Jake as well. Woodley's 40 years old, hasn't won since 2018, just got choked out in his last UFC match, and he still had a chance to knock you out. And he still looked more put together and more composed with the stamina later on in the match, definitely on Woodley's part. But Woodley was too scared, obviously was smaller, and never controlled it, so he never had a chance in the fight. But oddly enough, Woodley had the only knockout opportunity. Again, didn't take it. Blows my mind.
I mean, you expected Woodley to be better conditioned. He's the actual professional athlete.
Yeah, but he didn't make a sweat look like.
In rings like that before.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Jake Paul was sitting up like, hey, like he had enough boxing sense to keep his composure together to actually keep him off of him.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a bit of him being scared, but he used his jab to perfection, being as much as you can in an amateur fight like that.
Yeah.
We're not going to say he's a master jabber, but if you look at what he actually did in that fight, I mean, he threw 122 jabs. Like, that was his go-to punch, and he was landing jabs to the body quite often, too.
Yep.
So he was creating space, getting Woodley up off of him, and Woodley was just scared of that right hand because he did throw quite a few wild ones that looked like if he had connected, that might have been a wrap for him.
Yeah.
So it's like, man, Woodley was he was ultimately scared. So like, you can't talk like that. And then we watched you be scared the whole time.
And then go in the presser and say, yeah, I definitely want my rematch. I definitely won that fight. Landed the power shots when I need to, walked him down. I'll give it to you, Woodley. You landed the hardest shots of the fight, but you never capitalized on them. You never moved in. You never went for the kill. And that was the knock on him in UFC. Didn't look any different in the ring to me.
There were no setups. It's all power fights.
Right.
All power shots.
Yeah.
No jab,
and
no
Woodley's
combos.
a hell of an athlete, too. I mean, let's just be real.
But he's not a boxer.
Right.
It's just like we talked about before. Like last week, we sat in here, was like, man, that dude is not a boxer, and he's going to lose because he's boxing. You can't grab him. You can't grapple. And the way that he fights standing up in the octagon does not work in a regular ring.
Right.
You complaining because the ropes are too tall. Like, are you serious? But if the ropes weren't 7'2", I'd have knocked you through the ropes.
He said that?
Yeah, he said that in the press conference. He said that in the ring when they put the mic in his face.
Jesus.
It's like, man, seriously, that's the best you got after that?
Yeah.
Like, how about you just own your performance?
Yeah.
But I mean, even though the fact that Jake came in there and said that, man, you get that tattoo and I'll grant you the rematch, you agreed to the tattoo before the fight. Mm-hmm. It shouldn't even have to be a rematch clause for you to get it. It's like, I mean, I think it was a stupid bet, but you made it.
Yeah, the whole antics in the ring afterwards were kind of like, I don't know, it kind of felt like bad acting. Oh, you say you don't want to fight me again? Like, come on, dude. I don't know. It's kind of, I'm not going to lie, the fight really did come off underwhelming from Woodley's walk up to the LED trunks with Paul. Like, I thought Paul's setup was just kind of ugly. Woodley looked totally tapped out. I wasn't feeling his setup either. It was just, I'm not going to lie, it was kind of underwhelming for me. But, I mean, we got to witness it, so ready for Jake's next opponent, though, for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, we can piggyback right off into that. Who do you think his next opponent should be?
I got to say Nate Diaz. Him and Diaz have been chirping a lot lately, and especially right after the fight. Diaz is always coming in, tweeting, saying, man, both of these guys are awful, talking about how Jake would absolutely get wrecked if he stepped in the ring. And these guys, like I said, have been chirping a lot, and I feel like Jake, I want to say Jake had a call out for him in the past. And I don't know if Nate's per se going to entertain it, because you also have Jake on the other side as well as saying, I'm not going to entertain another sad UFC fighter, quote, he just wants a payday, and you've got also that kind of mantra from Jake Paul as well. But I will say, I think the next fight will really expose Jake Paul, because if Woodley knew how to pull the trigger, and this kind of goes to say it, but I feel like if Woodley knew how to pull the trigger and was just a little more of an effective boxer, he could have won that fight. I feel like the next fight is going to be a true combat sports artist that Jake Paul is just going to look completely mismatched again in all aspects, which is kind of what people expected to see in the Woodley fight. But again, Woodley just had no sense of awareness. So, but I got to say Nate Diaz. I also thought Dylan Dennis, but I think Dennis would sleep him in like 45 seconds. Absolutely.
Let's see, man, I wasn't expecting Woodley to be successful just because of what we saw. I mean, I knew exactly what that was going to look like. I mean, it was sad. But I think the best actual matchup, like, we should stop reaching for UFC guys. I mean, Nate Diaz probably would be a good fight. I mean, I absolutely will watch it. It doesn't matter who he fights.
Right.
But bringing a retired boxer into this ring.
Yeah.
You're boxing, fight a boxer. Fight Roy Jones Jr. He's the same height as you. His arms are probably a little bit longer. He's a lot older. So, I mean, it's not to that much of your disadvantage to fight a former legendary boxer because he's like 50-something. It's like, man, fight Roy, fight Bernard Hopkins.
Yeah.
These dudes have been out of the ring forever, but they're actually of the size and specs to stand into a boxing ring with you. He's always fighting people that are 4 or 5 inches shorter, like little dudes that aren't fighters. It's like, man, all right, you've got four fights under your belt. There's not all that many, but since you running your mouth like that, you got Canelo Alvarez on your hit list. Like, there's no way in hell
absolutely not
that you'd ever get into a ring with the current pound-for-pound best fighter in the world.
Hell no.
Why would anyone do that? I mean, that would be a massacre. But I think if he stepped in the ring with Roy Jones, it'd be a massacre. If he fights a fighter, it'll be ugly. It'll end all of that. But I would love to see that. Like, all right, like you've done all the theatrics. Now fight a boxer.
Yep.
That's your height that has as much weight on you naturally as you do.
Exactly. Because it's all been mismatches for Jake Paul.
Yeah, it's like no one that he stepped in that ring with would actually be allowed to fight him in a normal boxing match because of their weight.
Exactly.
So it's like, man, come on, step up to a much better challenge. Like, get a boxer.
Right.
I mean, he can't get a boxer that no one's heard of because then no one will watch it.
Right.
So it's like, man, call Roy, call Bernard, man. I'm sure Roy's game. Like, he's all about the show.
Right.
You want to talk some trash? Like, he got more mouthpiece than anybody. I'd love to see that. I think that's Petty Sports is calling for Jake Paul versus Roy Jones in the Paul brothers.
Let's make it happen. You heard it here first.
Absolutely. What?